Hello, everybody. Today we are farming kelp, and this is nice, fancy, organic kelp cooked by hand on the campfire behind me. The problem is, takes out. Oop. The problem is, it does take a little while for it to cook, but once it's done, we get a nice kelp block. It only takes 9 kelp, which means 2 rounds on the campfire plus an extra one, and yeah, there you go. But there is a better way of doing this. No, instead, here at Scooter Industries, we have a way of automatically farming the kelp, cooking the kelp, crafting it into kelp blocks, and then from there, it can be used in our smelters to power a super smelter, fully renewable, fully sustainable. It's even green. It is literally green. So today, we are going to automate the entire process from start to finish, and by the end, we should have way more than 3 kelp blocks. Now, my plan is to do it on the island over here. Depending on how much space it takes up, I can probably fit the super smelter itself on the same island. So, in this box here, I have gathered quite a few materials that I am going to use to make my super duper Kelpificator 17,000. Yes, I have not come up with a firm name on that yet, but that's all right. So let's put together the first part of the contraption, and then I'll show you how it's going to work. And from there, we'll build all the rest of the stuff. Okay, and here we are. We've got the kelp machine section of this fully installed, and let's take a quick peek at how all of this works. So, on the inside, the kelp grows up in front of the observers. They send a signal down to the pistons. They punch the kelp. Kelp floats up, across, into the hoppers, into the barrels, where I will have a hopper minecart coming underneath to collect it and send it off to the next stage. On this side, I have got a section for the input of bone meal, and the bone meal gets fed into dispensers underneath the kelp, as you can see there. That sends a signal again to the sticky piston, pushes the observers. They send the signal up into the dispensers, and then that way I can make kelp much faster than the slow natural growth that you're seeing here. Now, one thing I've actually done here, I have made a mistake. Similar to when I was designing my storage system in the warehouse over there, I forget that hopper minecarts do not push items down into barrels like this. They can only pull items from above. So if I want to push items down, I need to have hoppers here instead. Okay, I'm going to pop some bone meal into this so that we can see the system at work. Now, some of it seems to get caught at the bottom, but I'm honestly not too worried about that. It eventually kind of floats up maybe, but enough of it does get into the system and caught in the barrels here that I'm happy enough. The whole thing does not have to be perfect and lossless. At the end of the day, this thing is going to be infinite and running in the background, so I'm going to have more than enough kelp for my purposes. Now, the next part of this is going to involve installing some smokers that'll turn the kelp into dried kelp. And then from there, I need to compress those dried kelp items into the dried kelp blocks. And that is going to be done with the crafter. So this crafter is going to take the kelp just like so in a hopper in this case. When it fills up, it spits it out because I've got another crafter sending a full signal into the comparator, and then it goes into subtract mode. So this can only turn on when it's as strong of a signal as the one that's coming in the side, which means it only turns on when this thing is full. And when it is full, it spits out the little redstone signal through the top, and then boom, you've got your kelp block. So if I pop those in there, there we go. It starts to spit them out just like so. And if you put something like a barrel in front, actually, pop those back in, the crafter will spit it right into the barrel. So you don't have to worry about any collection systems or anything like that. And that little setup, just one crafter like that, that is what makes the kelp farm suddenly viable. Because in the past, you had to craft those kelp blocks manually, which would just take so much time that even though kelp is a great fuel source, it wasn't worth it because you couldn't automate it. And now you can. So I am going to get to work installing the smokers so that we can start cooking the kelp, and installing my auto crafter system so that I can craft it into blocks, and that feeds back into the smelter as the fuel, and then anything excess is the excess, which is going to go into the super smelter. And then of course at some point later I'm going to have to do a whole bunch of decorative stuff on the inside and put up some walls and a roof and make it all nice and fancy. So let's start with the mechanisms and then we will go from there. All right, here we go. We've got the rest of everything installed now for the Kelp Collectorificator 9000. So there are 3 different rail lines in this big tangled mess that you can see here. The first, this is where the bone meal is going to come in. So this hopper minecart would collect from here and distribute it into the system to grow the kelp. This second line here that bends around, that is where it takes the kelp that's being collected for the machine and it deposits it into the smokers here. Those in turn feed into the crafter, which crafts the dried kelp into dried kelp blocks, comes down to this final rail line, and that hopper minecart is taking all of the dried kelp blocks, putting them into the back of the smokers as fuel, and from there the whole system can be self-sustaining. And I think it is time for us to kick things off. So first, I'm going to load a bunch of bone meal into the system, and let's see. Here we go. It's starting to work. And then yeah, the smokers are filling up with relatively even amounts of kelp. That's okay. Okay. And then what I think I'll do for now is load some coal into the system, and that should get these smokers all running. Look at that. There we go. And as those start to smelt, that's going to put things in here, and it's crafting it and putting it in there. We've got it. We've got a dried kelp block, and the system is now picking those up. Perfect. Now I'm worried that all of the kelp is essentially going into maybe only the first few hoppers here. Yeah, it's only making it into the first few before it runs out because there's just simply not enough coming in. I wonder if there's a way of making this faster at all, because I am using smokers, and smokers are already twice as fast for smelting kelp as regular furnaces, so I don't think that's the issue. Let me see what I can do. Alright, so I've made some adjustments on the fly here. So the first thing I've done is I've redirected the hopper lines so that it's not all of them on one side feeding into the crafter. Instead, these 4 get split off into a separate line, and then you have 2 feeding in at the same time. And hopefully that means that the dried kelp will go into the crafters at twice the speed, which means they will craft it twice as fast. Additionally, over here, I've added 2 more hoppers, so that gives a bit more opportunity for this to pull bone meal out from there. And I've preloaded the whole thing with almost all of my bone meal. Oops. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop you there, little buddy. There you go. So let's try running this again and see if it's gonna do a little bit better for us this time. All right, first for the bone meal, we're gonna pull the lever. That seems to be working pretty well. Yeah, it's actually going quite a bit faster than before. That's perfect. So we're starting to do another build up there. I almost wonder if I need a better way of distributing the kelp, because if only a little bit gets in each time, that's wasting the fuel, especially on this side, because this is the side that the fuel is getting in, and the kelp is being put in primarily on this side. So yeah, if you are new to the channel, hi, hello, I'm Scooter. This is how I do redstone. I kind of just wing it, figure it out. That's never steered me wrong before. But yeah, now I'm wondering whether having 16 smokers is too many. So maybe we need to tear out half of this, or at least maybe I can lock half of it. Maybe that'll work. But see, even this, like, there's actually so much that's already being crafted. So if I wasn't feeding it back in to the system as fuel, that would already be quite a few building blocks to work with. But that's not what I want. All right, I'm going to let that run for a while, see what happens as I expend all of my bone meal. And once I have the results, I'll know whether or not I should rip out the guts of this thing. And yeah, I'll experiment, see what's happening, and bring you in once I've got something more finalized. So I fixed it by chopping off most of it. In reality, I've actually rebuilt maybe about 3/4 of this entire thing. Yeah, it was way too big before, and the whole minecart thing, I really wanted it to work. It was not working. So instead, we've got still the same setup on the back here. That is still in place. But from there, everything else has now changed around. So the bone meal input, no more minecart running across the track doing one at a time. It was just too slow. So instead, I've got, well, 2 separate chests that I can dump a bunch of bone meal in when I have a bunch of bone meal, when I eventually do a moss farm in the future. And then once the kelp grows, if it doesn't get stuck, it goes up over the top into these hoppers. And instead of barrels with minecarts hauling it out, it all gets centralized here, which then flows down into these hoppers and chests into these 4 smokers. Those cook up the kelp. It goes across here to a single crafter. And a similar setup, it just detects the signal so that it knows when to craft the block. But additionally, the kelp block gets pushed up into the dropper. When it goes like that, the signal also comes across here up into the dropper. That pushes it up into the hopper. And then that comes across behind the smokers, fills up the fuel. As you can see, I've got some coal in the system, but it fills it up like so. And then anything extra will land in this barrel. And that is where the super smelter is going to pull its fuel from. But it still has some issues. Primarily, I need way more kelp. At the moment, I do not have the bone meal infrastructure to have it running all of the time. But for now, I think what I'm going to do is build some extra kelp tanks. And I'm hoping having a few extra tanks of this stuff will be enough to keep the machine going and going and going constantly so that we can build up a proper store of fuel, which will eventually get stored in the smelter for when I need to do big smelting jobs. But yeah, if I'm going to make this thing work, I do need more of the raw materials. So yeah, let's build up some kelp tanks. Let's maybe install the super smelter right next door and start getting this project closer to completion because yeah, it's already taken longer than I anticipated. Lots of trial and error, which should not surprise me and probably surprises none of you out there if you've seen anything else on my channel so far. Because as we all know by this point, I'm winging it 99% of the time and it always works out, right? I never have to redo anything ever, right? It's been a long day. Let's get to work. All right, we are back and I have made some meaningful progress. Starting here, we've got a whole bunch more kelp tanks going on with the kelp growing and then getting pushed by the pistons, pushed into the middle, and then collected for smelting. Nothing too complicated with that. It's essentially a repeat of the earlier one I made up there, just without the bone meal dispensers below. Oh, look, there it is in action. So that kelp gets collected, sent up through the droppers here, which I've got a little dropper elevator. It shoots across and then goes crazy with the pistons. And then that comes across into the smelters here, where it's not the most effective thing at the moment, just because I don't have enough kelp coming into the system consistently to make this run all the time. And what that means is that a lot of the kelp blocks I'm using for fuel get wasted because, as you can see, it's run out of kelp and it's still burning, which means I'm losing valuable kelp smelting time. And even in the back here, you can see it's just about full. So this thing essentially breaks even with the amount of kelp that I'm collecting right now, but it's not enough to power a smelter or super smelter, as you can see behind me. Because yeah, I've also installed that now, or at least I've begun to install it. There's still a lot more work to do. Now up at the top here, I've added a little compost thingamajigger here so I can, would you be quiet, pistons? I can add plant matter and compost that into bone meal, which goes into the system, which gets wasted every now and then. But for now, I am happy that the machine is at least breaking even and I'm not burning through kelp and wasting it entirely. So around the bottom, this is where the kelp is being collected. From there, I can take a minecart chest thing. Ouch. And that's going to distribute the fuel across the whole system. Ouch. And then any leftover fuel is going to get dumped in here so that I can collect it for building blocks, because it is a cool block to build with, of course. And then on the top, I'm going to have the input. This is not final. This is just for now. Input's going to come across here. I do want to waterlog all of these rails so that it goes across at a nice even pace. And that's going to drop all the smelty stuff into the smelters to smelt into smelted stuff. Is the word smelt starting to sound weird for you? As you can also see, we've got a new bridge installed over the water here, which I'm actually pretty pleased with. It's been a little while since I've done a bridge, so it was kind of fun to just build something that's not redstone. And this is going to have a rail connection going all the way across here up through into the warehouse, because I'm going to send product from the warehouse out through here across the bridge, and then that's going to be loaded and ready to go for the auto smelting system. But right now, the main goal for me is to get the rest of this smelter system ready to go, build up the rest of the exterior of the building so that it actually looks decent, and then decide if I'm going to do anything to dramatically increase the amount of kelp coming into the system. I've got some ideas, which may or may not involve teaching myself how to do a flying machine underwater and having a much, much bigger all at once harvest of kelp. I do have to mention, this whole thing up to this point has been actually quite a bit of fun. Like, I've never done a dropper item elevator like that before, so I had to figure out exactly how I wanted to get that up and running. This is going to be one of the bigger super smelters that I've done before. Not huge by crazy YouTuber standards, but huge by scooter standards. And this whole thing, I really enjoyed the multi-level approach where I can kind of come into the inside of the machine and yeah, see all the inner workings and stuff. It's a lot of fun. So I'm going to crack on with finishing up as much as I can, and then I'll bring you in once I've got more that's being finished up. See you in a moment. All right, everybody. I think we are almost done this big kelp complex. But before I show you all of the progress, which you can kind of see in the background here, there's one more piece missing. So let's head on a quick little adventure to find that one last thing that's going to make this whole thing fully complete. Okay, here we are back at our main original starter base. I do have to admit, I have missed this place a little bit, but we are here because behind this funky door, I've got an, well, small army of allays. And these guys are going to be my method for collecting kelp in my next iteration of the kelp collecting thingamajigger thing that I made. How many allays? Maybe 3? Let's do 3. You can take that. 1, 2, 3. And close the door. So I've got 3 allays. If I go through, are they just going to follow me? Will you follow me? Let's see, 1, 2. Can I get your buddy to come through? Oh no. Came out. Ah, I might have to live with 2. Let's just go back. It's 1, 2. I think we got him. Let's go over here and yeah, that's the building. Very cool. 1. Where on earth is your buddy? You're supposed to be using the buddy system. So we've got 1 allay. I'm going to get him over here first. And yeah, he's already doing what I need him to do. This is my 3rd kelp collection system. I'm using a flying machine down the bottom and it knocks out the stalks of kelp and then they all float right to the top here. And then the allays, in theory, are going to come along the surface, grab all of the kelp, and then toss it in here. Just like that. That then goes through the tube, up the tube, across, and down into the original kelp collection system, which then filters down and is currently being smelted by 2 of the smokers. And this should finally be enough that it's going to be more than just breaking even. This is going to start the buildup of the dried kelp blocks that I'm looking for. So let me see if I can get the other allay over here because, yeah, this is a little bit too much work for just one of these guys. Where did you go? There you are. Come on. I've got a great employment opportunity for you. Benefits include um, the satisfaction of knowing you're working in a green industry. Where'd you go? There you are. Okay, perfect. So you're working, and your friend, I think, is working too. And oh, that's embarrassing. I may have to add a few more hoppers to the mix. But for now, I think this is working. There's nothing left on the surface, which is perfect. Now, let me show you a little bit more about what on earth is actually going on here. Down below, this is the flying machine. Not my design. This sort of thing has been around for years, honestly. You've got sticky pistons, slime, and observers. And when this observer notices a change in the block above it, it kicks off a chain reaction and the whole thing just scoots across to the other side. And what I'm using to trigger that is a daylight detector on top of an observer. So, for instance, every time that I go to sleep, skip the night, and a new day starts, that gets detected. It's going to kick off the machine, it's going to shoot across, and a whole bunch of kelp is going to get harvested all at once. But let's take a look at this building in all its glory. Again, jumping into free cam, my favorite new toy. So this is what we've got on the outside. You can see there's a few segments to the building. On this side with the mud brick, that is the half that the smelter and the rail distribution system is housed in. In the middle, that is where all of the kelp is being smelted down into the dried kelp blocks. And then this is, of course, the big tank where we're at least collecting a little bit of kelp. mainly this thing. This is really where the action happens. On the outside, I've got some big smokestacks shooting out smoke or steam or whatever into the sky. I really like the design of this, just the copper grates and the trap doors. I think it looks really, really cool. I am honestly in love with all of the new copper blocks they've introduced in this latest update, and I may have a slight addiction to the copper trapdoors. Just a slight addiction, not a big problem by any stretch of the imagination. No, not at all. But anyways, yes, talking about the outside of the building, I decided to go with something quite different from the main warehouse here, which as you can see is very uniform, very proper, very nice. This whole thing feels like a crazy shack held together by chewing gum and rubber bands, and it's just a very different feel. And I think that was appropriate because almost like the actual project today, I went through several iterations of the whole kelp collection and smelting stuff, and so the building almost looks as if it's been built and expanded upon over time with different segments. And I think that's a really fun approach to the building. It's got built-in storytelling to it, and that storytelling actually happens to line up with the reality of what went on building the interior. But let's head on inside here now and show you what we have got. So, I mean, I have to clean up this whole giant crazy chest monster. As you can see, there's a lot of different stuff that's gone into the construction here. But the main gist, I think you already have a sense of. We've got the super smelter along this side. Also, details. Got some dried kelp on the wall here, sort of in a storage thing, I suppose you could say. I think it looks pretty neat. But let me show you now the inner workings. I'll bring you behind the curtain where authorized employees only are allowed. So from the main warehouse, I can send minecarts in. They'll come through the little door there and go, let's say, up here. And that is where it's going to take what's in that minecart, spit it out into this thingamajigger here, which is a chest. And that's going to go into this other minecart. That is the one that's going to send the fuel, not the fuel, that's going to send the stuff to be smelted into the furnace array. And I've got these powered rails waterlogged, so the thing's just going to go back and forth like this at a constant, steady speed because of the water, distribute all of the stuff evenly into the system. And then when it's done, I mean, that's actually just powered by, that is just powered by this thing here. So it's empty right now, but if I hit the lever, it does open the door. There we go. Goes at a nice gentle speed, so that gives it plenty of time to drop off stuff into the hoppers below. And then when the thing is done, I can just turn it off like that, and then the minecart will return to its place. Additionally, up here, if I don't want to use that the minecart from the factory, I can just manually put things in here to be put through the super smelter. Now, once everything is done, this hopper line takes it, puts it into this chest as the output, and then I can take, well, actually, let me show you. If I flip this lever, the minecart that's up here, there's a button on the other side, I can send that one down, and then that one is the one that's being used to collect the output. So I can use the same minecart that came in to go out of the system. Once it is done, I will hit that button, powers it, shoots it off to the warehouse for storage. Now coming back through here, I've got another minecart, and this is the thing that's going to collect any of the excess fuel. So once all of these smokers are actually full of kelp blocks, which will take a while, this is going to start collecting stuff, and then I can send that through to be distributed into all of these. So in fact, got some right now. Let's do a little bit of that. That's going to go across like so, distributing these into the super smelter. And once again, when I am done with it, I can just turn that off, and then it's going to come back here, collect more, and then we're basically in business. Now, you'll notice this whole thing involves a lot of buttons and levers and turning things on and off manually. And that's incredibly intentional for two reasons. First reason, I don't have the time or the mental energy to figure out how to automate it even more. But the second reason, and arguably more important reason why I'm not automating this more than I already am, is because I kind of want to play the game, if that makes sense. You see, sometimes the temptation with Minecraft is to just turn everything into an automatic factory where you don't have to lift a single finger to collect all the resources you want, and that's a completely valid way of playing the game. But for me, I kind of enjoy, particularly in this base, this whole industrial thing. I like the idea of there being people like me pulling the levers and making things work, and you have to actually engage with the machinery or it's not going to do anything. And that is one of the fun things with Minecraft. You can do it that way. It might not be the most perfectly efficient thing on the planet, but does that really matter? At the end of the day, if I'm having fun, I think that's really the main thing, right? My goodness, look at that. If that's not the most beautiful thing I've seen in the 3 weeks it's taken to make this video, I don't know what is. There we go. That should now be enough to catch everything being dropped by these guys. And while we've got the rain in the atmosphere, let's do a little shaders action. Oh gosh, I love the way it looks when it's raining out here, especially by the ocean. And from a distance, in context with the rest of the warehouse, I think it actually fits in really, really well. Even though I use some different blocks, a lot more deep slate in the design here, it honestly complements it. And I think I'm going to use a similar style throughout the whole area, of course, getting the copper blocks from the trial chambers. That's been a lifesaver, honestly. Let's come around the back because, yeah, I did finish the back. That looks actually pretty neat. Something a little bit different, not too detailed, but you know, just enough. But I think that's honestly where I will wrap it up for today. I have an overnight AFK session I want to do and see just how much kelp I can collect, but I'm not going to bore you with that. By overnight, I mean like I need to go to bed. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Hope you guys like the kelp thing. I still don't know what to call this. The little kelp factory. Maybe that's what it is. Who knows? Hope you like it. And until next time, hope you have a great night, or day, or afternoon, wherever you are. See ya.